Good morning, my name is Josh from CyclonesOZ, and today another detailed weather forecast coming your way. We're going to be talking about some very heavy rainfall for Central Australia. We're also going to be talking about some cold fronts expected to impact Western Australia. One or two of them could be very strong. We'll talk about some heavy rainfall for far North Queensland and the record-breaking cold snap that's plaguing Victoria, Tasmania and South Australia. I'll let you know how cold conditions have gotten, especially over Tasmania, later on in the video. All of that plus more coming up in today's weather forecast. If you are brand new to the channel, please consider subscribing and also leave a like on the video while you're at it. Thank you so much for 16,000 subscribers. The support is incredible. So taking a look at the satellite picture right now, it leads us very nicely into the first part of our video, and that's some heavy rainfall for Central Australia. Now, typically you see this sort of rainfall happen February, March and April, later on in the wet season when those thunderstorms really do kick in, but it's happening now in July, early July, and we're talking about some cloud activity that's streaming across the central parts of South Australia today, keeping things relatively mild in contrast to some very cold conditions across New South Wales and Victoria. Now, this rainfall is going to be starting in around 24 to 36 hours time, depending on the location. Already some moderate falls starting to be recorded outside of Ceduna, which has had a couple of millimetres in the past 24 hours. We're also talking about some light rainfall as far north and inland as Cooperpedy and Unundana. We're also talking about a little bit of rainfall that's expected to fire up in terms of thunderstorms up into Queensland later on this afternoon. So I'm going to keep a very close eye on the satellite picture because there is going to be isolated strong thunderstorms as far north as Mount Isa. Now, these thunderstorms are not going to be ridiculously severe or anything, but they will have some heavy rainfall and isolated damaging winds. So if you are travelling through the western parts of Queensland or the central parts of Queensland and into South Australia, then make sure you are taking extra care when you are on the roads and look at the forecast very closely because it looks like we do have a little bit of rainfall expected to fire up throughout the course of today. For those leaving the Birdsville Bash as well, I know that was a couple of days ago at this time, but just take extra care, and I do recommend getting as far into the Northern Territory as possible over the coming 24 hours because the heavy rainfall is going to be sealing shut those roads through South Australia and parts of central Queensland, and I'll explain that right now. You can see these thunderstorms expand in terms of size and the precipitation becomes more light to moderate across South Australia and Queensland. Still some heavy showers here and there, all powered along this trough line that's extended across Queensland into South Australia and even into parts of the Northern Territory. The rainfall will be at times, like I said, moderate to heavy. It's not going to be ridiculous in terms of creating all-out crazy precipitation totals here and there, but we're still expecting at least 30 or 40 millimetres for some of these locations. And you can see it continues into Saturday morning, even into Saturday afternoon, these thunderstorms for Queensland and heavier falls into South Australia as well. It's going to be pretty consistent and pretty predictable. The rainfall will only be hit and miss on the edges of this forecast here into the Northern Territory and the northern parts of South Australia. But for parts of southwestern Queensland and the northeastern corner of South Australia, the rainfall is going to be quite predictable and quite consistent, especially Saturday night into Sunday morning, which, as you can see here, it becomes this big rain band powered by this low pressure system in deep South Australia or outside of Roxby Downs and Broken Hill in New South Wales, which will then be tracking across South Australia into New South Wales, which leads us very nicely into the next part of the video. But without spoiling anything, you can see rainfall accumulations here over the next 3 days. Up in Queensland, where it will be a little bit more unpredictable because of those thunderstorms, it's going to be varying between 0 to 100 millimetres for locations. It is a pretty easy forecast to make. The Access G3 saying a pretty similar thing in terms of how predictable the rainfall is and how much is expected. They're slightly less optimistic in terms of rainfall though, but 100 millimetres up here, I know that's a lot, and I know that it's very unlikely that one weather station is going to pick up 100 millimetres in the next 3 days, just because of how remote everything is in this part of Australia. 100 millimetres though will cause some pretty significant flooding in this part of Australia, especially for river levels that are already a lot higher than what they normally are this time of the year, and for soil moisture values that are currently hovering at 50 or 60%, which is typical wet season stuff for this part of Central Australia. It is a pretty concerning forecast to have, especially as this system gets deeper into Queensland and into New South Wales, where the rainfall becomes a lot more predictable and it will likely be falling between 20 and 40 millimetres for these locations. And it's an easy forecast to make between the forecast models as well. They're all saying basically the same thing at this time, or a very similar thing. 20 to 40 millimetres will cause washouts and it will cause minor flooding in locations, possibly even up towards moderate flooding for certain locations as well. Some of the rivers flowing into Lake Eyre are at risk of getting up towards that minor to moderate flooding levels, so make sure you are keeping on top of the Bureau of Meteorology's flood watches and so forth. They will be issued today if they haven't already been issued. So yeah, we will just have to wait and see what's actually going to be happening in terms of flooding here. But if you are travelling through this part of Central Australia, I highly recommend taking a big detour up towards the north or further towards the west. Get yourself into the Northern Territory or the western half of South Australia, where the rainfall will be a lot lighter and a lot more unpredictable in terms of where it's going to be, which means there will be less of it overall. Just get yourself away from this part of Queensland, especially around Birdsville, Moomba, and then into anywhere basically north of Broken Hill around Tibooburra in New South Wales. The rainfall, it just will be too wet to commute on these gravel roads. So stay safe when you are on those roads. Stay safe in this part of Queensland just in general from this weather event. It looks like a pretty nasty amount of rainfall is coming through. Now, on Monday and Tuesday, this rainfall event is going to be moving further in towards New South Wales, and it's going to be providing soaking rainfall for the agricultural parts of New South Wales and Queensland. Up to 20 millimetres is expected. Then it gets itself onto the shore around at Tuesday afternoon as a reasonably strong sort of cold front sort of system. It will have some gusty winds in its core, gusty northerly winds that will be skimming along the New South Wales coastline, so boating conditions and surf conditions looking quite rough from about Tuesday morning. That will continue into Wednesday as well, when those conditions are expected to ease off a little bit. But in terms of rainfall from this event here, we're expecting up to 50 millimetres to be falling along the coastline between Lismore, Coffs Harbour and down towards Taree. We could be seeing up to 50 millimetres fall as far south there. The major population centres such as Sydney only expecting about 20 millimetres, Newcastle about 15 to 20 millimetres or so. Once you get inland, the rainfall is a very predictable 10 to 20 millimetres or so, which will be coming through in a pretty thick, moderate band of rainfall on Monday evening through to about Tuesday early afternoon, most likely around that Tuesday morning. So on that morning commute to work Tuesday, make sure you are taking extra care on those roads. For farmers, it looks like some good rainfall is inbound as well, especially in the northern parts of New South Wales. Widespread totals up to 25 millimetres, and it's soaking rainfall. Like I said, it's not too heavy. It's not going to just go straight to runoff, and we are expecting some pretty good rainfall from this event as a whole. Offshore from Brisbane and the Gold Coast, although those population centres aren't expecting too much rainfall on their own, there still will be some good falls offshore, up to 50 millimetres or so, and those suburbs directly adjacent to the coastline could be in the firing line of up to 50 millimetres in very heavy showers here and there. And the rainfall also extending up the Queensland coastline, which leads us very nicely into our discussion on far north Queensland. For locations between Cooktown down towards Townsville, expecting some good rainfall there as well. You can see isolated pockets here outside of Innisfail, up to 120 millimetres over the next 5 days. Some very good rainfall expected, and the majority of that is going to be falling this weekend. In fact, some of it is already falling right now. We've got some showers streaming ashore around the Cairns area, and they've been pretty consistent over the past 12 hours. They've been a lot heavier than what they are now, that's for sure. And we've had some accumulations up towards 40 millimetres in those mountains adjacent to the coastline. The rainfall will be picking up once again today. It's also going to be picking up for communities south around Airlie Beach and Mackay. We could be seeing a couple of light to moderate showers stream in ashore there. Nothing more than 15 millimetres expected though. But if we were to take a look at the forecast models here, throughout the course of today, this rainfall really picking up for this part of far north Queensland, especially for locations between Cairns and Ingham. And the rainfall actually becoming quite heavy at times later tonight. We're expecting accumulations up to 15 millimetres every 3 hours from these heavy showers. In fact, maybe even isolated pockets a little bit higher than that as we get towards the early hours of Saturday morning, and then things easing off throughout the course of Saturday, and the rainfall really only being light and moderate showers here and there through Saturday, Sunday, and then into early Monday morning when they will ease off. But like I said, over the coming 5 days, we're talking about some pretty good rainfall accumulations. Tully expecting up to 80 millimetres, Innisfail up to about 60 or 50 millimetres, Cairns itself expecting a healthy 25, Port Douglas as well expecting a healthy 60 or 70 millimetres, so some very good rainfall there. And like I said, around Mackay, although Mackay itself only expecting a couple of millimetres, the mountains outside of it around Mount Ogmore, or Ogmore's down towards the south, but I think it's Yalburu expecting up to 30 millimetres of rainfall. So that's some good rainfall there for this part of Queensland, which has been neglected in terms of rainfall over the last couple of months. It is certainly their dry season, but still some much needed rainfall and some much appreciated rainfall there too. Well, before we go and talk about the powerful cold fronts over in Western Australia, we'd just like to touch on the strong cold front that's expected to come through sometime later next week for the southeast of Australia. We're talking about a pretty powerful cold front that will be impacting Western Australia. It'll have some damaging winds sometime Wednesday and Thursday for Tasmania and Victoria, and even parts of the southern or southeastern coast of South Australia rather. Really getting my geography mixed up. It'll also have some snowfall accumulations for the Tasmanian highlands and into New South Wales and Victoria as well. We could be seeing a couple of centimetres of snowfall there. Be very cold in the wake at this cold front, some icy showers expected to continue through Thursday and Friday for the west coast of Tasmania and Victoria, or the south coast of Victoria at least. Big waves also expected in the wake of this cold front. So that's just a heads up, a powerful cold front expected to impact Victoria and Tasmania. Before we touch on the cold snap, the record-breaking cold snap for Victoria and Tasmania, we're going to talk about the weather for Western Australia. We have a big cold front that's now starting to line itself up offshore from Western Australia, and you can see it in the satellite picture right now. It looks pretty powerful, doesn't it, already? That cirrus cloud extending right up towards the West Australian coastline at this time, and it does look like a strong cold front. It's a textbook strong cold front on the satellite imagery this morning, with some pretty deep convection as well in it, which means it's got some strong thunderstorms, and that's reciprocated on the forecast here. You can see the eastern WF expecting this storm to fire up some powerful thunderstorms over the coming 24 to 36 hours before it gets to the West Australian coastline, and then I just don't understand it, but it completely fizzes out before getting to Western Australia. Now, I believe that's because of unfavourable atmospheric conditions, but Perth looks like it's going to be dodging a severe thunderstorm or two Saturday night into early Sunday morning. Still, though, the heads up, they are possible, and considering how warm the Lewin current is, which what we touched on in yesterday's video, the chance of isolated waterspouts and tornadoes, it's very low, single-digit percentage chances for the entire West Australian coastline, but just a heads up that there is that chance still there. Heavy rainfall also very unlikely, but still possible. And some small hailstones as well, very unlikely, but still possible from a weather event like this. It's just because it fizzes away before it gets to the coastline, but immediately before it gets to the coastline, which is unusual because normally these storms fire up before they get to the coastline. So it's an unusual weather forecast to have, but once again, reciprocated amongst the major forecast models, so I have no reason to doubt it at all. And I do believe it's because of very unfavourable atmospheric conditions. There's no energy in the atmosphere for these thunderstorms to take hold of, and there's a massive cold air mass over the top of Western Australia. So these thunderstorms are going to just get blasted by cold air basically and completely fizz in on themselves. And that's why we don't see the strong cold fronts impact the Perth metro area around July and August. They're more often or more common in May and June because there is just a little bit more energy for them when we're not truly in those winter weather conditions yet. But still, though, a good amount of rainfall is possible. Saturday night we could be seeing up towards 10 or 15 millimetres throughout the West Australian area, down from Carnarvon basically right down towards the south coast, as far inland as Esperance and as far inland as some of the easternmost wheat belt communities. We could be seeing some very good rainfall there. We're also talking about a little bit of rainfall behind it Saturday morning and into early Saturday afternoon. We could be seeing some heavy showers here and there for the Perth metro area. Just flick it back to the eastern WF forecast model here. A few thunderstorms also possible, but nothing crazy to write home about. And rainfall over the next 3 days, it shouldn't be too extreme. The Perth metro area is expecting a very hit and miss or very unpredictable, about 10 to 15, maybe up towards 20 millimetres or so. There will be places that get 40 millimetres from this cold front. I don't really see the possibility of there being any more. The wheat belt is going to miss out on the majority of the rainfall, but there is good news for them. The rainfall does extend further up the coastline. I'm right up towards Carnarvon, expecting some good rainfall up towards 10 or 15 millimetres there, but nothing penetrating too far inland, which again is some good news. And the good news for the wheat belt, which I just forgot to mention, is that there is another stronger cold front behind it coming through next Tuesday. A couple of strong thunderstorms expected to be embedded in this one as well. Some heavy rainfall for the Perth metro area coming through Tuesday night into early Wednesday morning, and some good showers coming in behind it as well. So the south coast is going to get some very good rainfall, probably up towards 80 or 100 millimetres of rainfall as this cold front makes its crossing through Tuesday, right through Wednesday. Also looks like it's going to be bitterly cold behind it. We're talking about temperatures, or feels like temperatures, plummeting to around zero. And just taking a look at this here, this might be a pretty good chance for some light snowfall accumulations Wednesday night into early Thursday morning on the Stirling Range peaks. There is a few spots in the backside of this cold front that are hinting at wet snow here and there. So again, we're going to have to wait and see on this one here. It does look like there is a good chance, or a slim chance at least, of a few snowfall accumulations on the Stirling Ranges. So for snow lovers, just hold out for a little bit of hope sometime Wednesday. It looks like conditions might be primed up for a little bit of snowfall here, but not really a high chance this time, only a couple of percent, maybe about 20 or 30% at this time. In terms of rainfall accumulations for the cold front after this over the next 10 days, we're talking about up to 50 or 60 millimetres for the Darling Ranges. Perth itself expecting up to 50 millimetres of rainfall, and like I said, the south coast expecting between between 80 and 100 millimetres here and there, although a little bit closer to 80. It looks like the rainfall has been back down a little bit. Wheatbelt communities are rubbing their hands, especially in the south around Katanning, expecting a healthy 30 millimetres. I know it's not enough to break the drought-like conditions that are currently being experienced there, but 30 millimetres is still great rainfall. We're also expecting some good rainfall in the western parts of the wheatbelt. The eastern parts of the wheatbelt around Merredin and Hyden, we're expecting some relatively higher degrees of unpredictability in terms of rainfall, only a couple of millimetres expected there, between 5 and 15. Further north up towards Killarney and Dalwallinu, we're expecting about 15 millimetres as well, and then inland into the Murchison, a healthy 20 to 30 millimetres there, which again is kind of rainfall that they don't need at this point. They've had a lot of rainfall so far this year as another moisture belt from the Indian Ocean streams in up in the central parts of Western Australia. That's enough talk on the West Australian cold fronts. If I've left anything unanswered, then please do ask me in the comment section down below. I look forward to getting back to all of the comments throughout the course of today. We're now going to talk about that extreme cold snap that is still plaguing Tasmania, Victoria and South Australia. There are a couple more days of very cold conditions still expected, especially for South Australia in the backside of this cold front that's coming through. But this morning again was a brutally cold -12 in Leewonwy in Tasmania, and once again the nation's coldest spot, and it's actually been the coldest week in this part of Tasmania in the last 10 years for the entirety of the Bureau of Meteorology's observation network across Australia. And it's been the coldest morning, I think it was Wednesday morning, was the coldest morning anywhere in Australia since 2020, August 2020, once again recorded at Leewonwy. So truly the nation's coldest spot in terms of minimum temperatures in winter. But this high pressure system just refusing to budge at this time, and that's plaguing Tasmania and the Victorian and New South Wales highlands with very cold conditions, and also a very cold air mass moving through South Australia and Western Australia, meaning another cold morning tomorrow morning. Conditions will go to 0 or below 0 in some places, especially into Western Australia and South Australia, and also temperatures plummeting well below 0 in parts of Tasmania and Victoria, and also New South Wales as well. But a much milder 4 or 5 degrees in parts of northern Victoria, as opposed to the close to 0 or below 0 temperatures that they have been reporting over the last couple of nights. The cold snap slowly easing off this weekend. It won't be until next week when the conditions finally get above 0 overnight for some parts of Tasmania and New South Wales. It will still be bitterly cold right through the rest of July. I mean, it is that time of the year, but it looks like those temperatures where we're talking about double digits below 0 are finally moving out by the end of this morning, and then maybe into tomorrow morning there is a chance of some double-digit below 0 temperatures, but still it looks like it might be a little bit warmer this weekend and then warmer again next week. And then when New Zealand's turn, I mean, look at this, well below 0 through here. We're talking about around that Mount Cook sort of region, again, minus double digits through there. And I believe it gets as low as -15 sometime next week on the South Island of New Zealand, so brutally cold down there. Finally, those conditions, though, warming up for the eastern states of Australia. They do desperately need a little bit of reprieve to the extreme cold that they have been receiving there. But yeah, once again, record-breaking cold for this part of Australia. I mean, all this talk about the climate warming and a lot more extremes, well, we've definitely got that extreme cold that's been plaguing Tasmania, but we're getting a lot of these really cold conditions across the eastern states of Australia this year. So it is very unusual, especially considering the Bureau of Meteorology predicted an 85% chance of above average minimum temperatures, and significantly above average minimum temperatures at that. And we've had this incredible run. It's been a couple of weeks now of very much below 0 temperatures across all of Tasmania and into Victoria and New South Wales as well. Tasmania was always going to be a little bit of a wild card this winter, but it looks like the forecast models haven't done a very good job at predicting the weather there once again. So yeah, it will be good once we get a little bit of a reshake in the Axis G3's forecasting powers. That'll be some great news indeed, but still enough talk on that. The weather is certainly remaining very interesting across this part of Australia. We've also got that major hurricane still in the Atlantic Basin, so if you're interested in coverage on that, then do check out the Cyclones Extra channel. I'd love to have your company over there as well. Thank you for your company this morning. If you haven't already, then please do leave a like on the video and subscribe while you're at it. Your support is greatly appreciated. Like I said at the start, thank you so much for 16,000 subscribers. That is an incredible number, and I could not do it without any one of you. I couldn't be purchasing the software that I am either without the channel sponsors as well. Their support is immensely appreciated as well, so thank you so much to all of them. Their names are on screen right now, and I could not run this show without them. But that is all from me this morning, and I'll catch you all in the next storm. Goodbye.